A very good evening to one and all present. Thank you very much today for joining us for this very important and intriguing session that we're going to have this evening on the importance of instilling ethics, value education, and technology in school education. I hope everybody is able to hear me clearly. In case you have any audio issues, please let us know in the chat box. Somebody from our team will reach out to you and help you guys. So, guys, we're going to make this session super engaging today. So, make sure that each of you guys are asking us a lot of questions. I'm sure many of you would have already noticed the chat box feature as I see a lot of messages are being exchanged there. So, if you have any questions at all during this particular session, feel free to ask us questions in the chat box. Both my co-moderator and I, we are closely scrutinizing the chat box. We will be picking up questions and posing them to both our esteemed panelists who have joined us today. It is my honor and privilege to introduce our esteemed panelists for this evening. We are joined by Ms. Archana Mankotia ma'am, who is the principal of MGD Girls School, Jaipur, one of the leading schools in India today. Thank you very much, ma'am, for taking out time from your busy schedule and being with us today. It really means a lot to us, and I'm sure all the people who have joined us would have a lot of their queries to be they'd be wanting to ask you. Also on this session, we are joined by Mr. Deepak Makrani. Mr. Deepak Makrani is the founder of an edtech company called deepakmakrani.com. He is the former academic head at Byju's. He has an extremely rich teaching experience. So we have these very two diverse personalities today who are going to be throwing light on this very important topic that we will be addressing today, which is the importance of integrating technology. As we all know, in the times of the pandemic, we have seen the immense use case of technology, and also we are seeing that how all of our school-going children are getting exposed to online education. So today is the right opportune moment to actually have a conversation about that how we can increase the exposure of technology at a school education level. Also, the second dilemma that a lot of us face as educators and also as parents is making sure that we're instilling the right ethics in our children today to make them better professionals of tomorrow. So, how do we integrate ethics and value education in a way that children don't find it boring and theoretical, but are actually able to imbibe those values is something that we're going to be exploring in this discussion today, along with my co-moderator, without whom this session wouldn't have been possible, Mr. Rajat Shah. Mr. Rajat Shah is an advocate in the Supreme Court and the Delhi High Court. Along with that, he's also a trustee of a school by the name of Narayani Public School in Uttar Pradesh. Thank you very much, Rajat, for organizing this session for us today and for also making yourself available to co-moderate this session.
Thank you, Kritika.
So without further ado, let us get into the session. Ma'am, the first question to you actually, which is, can you first throw some light and tell us that what is the importance of instilling ethics or, ensuring that we integrate ethics at a school education level? So if you can throw some light on that, I think that would be a great way to start and set context of this discussion today.
The question that you have asked is a very pertinent, crucial question and very relevant in these times because we are facing an age where things are changing so fast, society is changing so fast, the entire approach towards life is changing so rapidly that children and even adults, most of us are at sea to grapple with what is right and what is wrong. So it is an eternal question where when we are posed with this question. So the most important part of a schooling, if I talk as an educator, in my school curriculum, a very important part of the curriculum is imparting life skills. Now, life skills, as defined by World Health Organization, is the adaptive and positive behavior that children have to imbibe in order to face the challenges of life, in order to face different diverse situations in life. Now, how do we inculcate these life skills? Both teachers in the school and parents at home and adults in general in society are responsible to inculcate these life skills, which are like self-awareness, dealing with relationships, critical thinking, decision making, and social, emotional thinking skills. All these are part of life skills. How do we impart it to them? A school has a curriculum where we relate certain situations. For example, we have discussions on various topics, we have debates, we have storytelling through which we teach them certain ethics and values, morals. We have situational analysis. We ask our teachers that any time in the class something is happening, a child has done something wrong. What is important is not just letting out punishment, but explaining to the child that there are consequences of what you do. So making the child realize that what the child is doing is right and wrong. So through these various different activities, we impart life skills, which makes them more prepared to face the future. For parents, I feel they have to remember that they are the role models. And they are not role models for 1 or 2 days, they are role models forever. So unless they walk the talk, children are not going to learn anything. So they will be giving a lot of moral lectures to them, but unless, because children are like wet cement. In the first 10 years, their growth is most rapid, their brain is growing rapidly. So they are like wet cement. They are just anything that they see around, whatever they observe, they imitate, they follow. And parents are the people they will follow. So we must remember as parents that we have to be role models if we want our children to have certain moral standards. Another important thing that parents need to remember that they have to spend quality time with their children. Spending time does not mean just asking about what is the homework have you completed now, or this, but actually trying to understand what the child is about, what are his issues, what are his fears, what does he like, not like. Just spending quality time to understand your child. And when the child talks to you, you do not be judgmental, do not judge, do not tell him about life. Just make him realize, awaken his consciousness to understand what is right and wrong. So there are these lot of activities through the kind of right kind of communication, role modeling, reflection and feedback, reinforcements. Very, very important in today's scenario that we need to um, emphasize on moral moral values, and also life skills, and societal harmonious nature. In society, how we need to relate with each other. One last important point that I want to talk about is that, for example, taking this pandemic. Now, using pandemic as a situation to make them understand what adversity could be like and how to face it. Now, all people have been affected by pandemic. How they react to it, how the families, how the grandparents, how they react to it affects the child's thinking. And he may be facing a lot of these kind of situations later in life. But today, it's been a very good learning lesson that this is the time you can make your child understand that yes, adversity is part of life. What we do, what we need is to learn how to face it and overcome it. So values, morals, life skills, I think they are the backbone of our lives on which our entire future is, the foundation of our future is on these life skills. So it is very, very important that they are taught in school, by teachers, parents, and in society in general. Thank you, Kritika.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for answering that question very elaborately. I think you have actually highlighted some very key issues in your answer there. Now, I have another question to you. So, this new normal that we're talking about today, this has brought an entire new technological revolution. Somewhere this has also led to a situation where there are new skills that are needed for the workforce of tomorrow. So today we are talking about, be it any profession. You could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, you could be, you could be even a person in the field of art. Every single person now has to have some sort of adeptness to technology. Now, how do we sort of prepare children for this change that the world is going through at a school level? So, if I may hear from you on this, ma'am. I think you're on mute. Ma'am, you're on mute.
Now,
Yeah, you're audible.
so Kritika, due to this pandemic, what we have seen is that educational space has really changed. Overnight, we were plunged into a digital sea. All teachers had to, just get into the throes of technology, understand it, learn it, execute it, and use it as a classroom, which has been very, very difficult and very challenging, but we've all done it. So the bottom line is that technology is here to stay. We have to use technology even in future, even when it becomes the new normal. The new normal, in the new normal, technology is going to play a very predominant role. So there is no turning the clock back, which means technology is here to stay. My point is that it is not, the debate is not whether to use technology or we should not use. The debate now is how much we have to use it. Whether overuse or misuse of technology. And how do we get the benefits of technology? For children, because what I'm facing these days is every day we have a debate, maybe you must be hearing it in the newspapers, that how much is the, the correct optimum screen time? How many classes should be there? For which grades? This. So it's an ongoing debate, and I don't think we still have the right answers. Probably 10 years later, we will come to know what was the correct screen space and all. But the fact remains that technology is here. So why not use it to do all the research, to learn the best way that we can. At the same time, teaching our children to use technology and not let the technology use them. That's a very, very important thing. They should not get carried away into the, into that temptation of using technology for wrong things. Now, for that, again, how you use technology depends on the kind of life skills that you have imbibed. It's something like a knife. You can use that knife to murder somebody or to cut an apple and share it with your friend. What decides that is your moral compass. So technology needs to be now understood as to how you get the best out of technology, get it into our classrooms, balance our teaching, make a blended learning where we use technology at the same time, face-to-face teaching, which is as important, if not more. So, but along with this, carry on with the value teaching so that we know technology should always be subservient to us and should not rule us. So that is the important point. Thank you, Kritika.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think, what you've highlighted again, very important. The balance is key, and I think this is the question everybody is facing today. How do we strike that balance about how much exposure we should allow children to technology? Because everything has its pros and cons, right? And we also want to, as parents, want to moderate the exposure that children have to, technology, so that they can focus on other aspects of life. And like you very correctly said, that they need to first imbibe the right life skills, because that is key in the entire thing. At this point, I'd actually like to request Mr. Deepak Matrani to jump into the conversation. So while we've been now talking about school education, I think let us shift our focus to higher education. So what is happening in higher education today is, for example, if you see, every year there's so many students from India who write the SATs and who are wanting to go abroad. But with the entire coronavirus pandemic and with a lot of foreign universities now switching to the online medium, with the uncertainty with the virus, this entire mass exodus movement of students that happens is for the first time ever in a lurch. Parents are doubting whether they should actually be sending their students for foreign education. Second, because of the switch to online education, parents are even wondering if this is worth the money. Now, this entire situation has put a lot of pressure even on Indian higher educational institutions, because obviously now they don't want to go to these abroad universities. They're looking for options in our country, which is an opportunity for Indian higher educational institutions as well to raise the bar. So if you may throw some light, in this entire situation that's happening in higher education, how do you see it evolving? What is the future of, Indian students? Do you see in the coming years that there's going to be still a lot of movement that students are going to be going abroad, or there's going to be a lot of movement where students will prefer to stay in India? We would love to hear from you, from your rich experience in the field. So may I just request you to unmute yourself?
Yes. Kritika, I hope you can hear me. Thank you for the question. I will take some time to answer this particular one, and I will add on to whatever ma'am has said in terms of the technology. First thing we need to understand these days, what is happening is the phones are becoming smarter and people are becoming dumber. That is the problem which all of us are facing these days. Okay, it is phones, like you have smartphones these days, but it is very hard to find smart people over here. So we need to understand why this thing is happening. I'll come to that point in a while, but let's talk about the uncertainty aspect over here regarding this pandemic. First thing is, what we do not know that when the things are going to normalize. There are experts all over the globe who are predicting something or the another, shifting their stances. Now, I think we have sufficient data to know that the future is going to be a little more uncertain. Now, once you have uncertainty, to deal with uncertainty, you should be at your peak or slightly above the peak. For example, if I talk about like big happenings in our like culture, like one of the biggest happening was the war of the Mahabharata. Like that is still we talk about, okay, that war. In that war, I'm talking about war. Why? So this is a war-like situation, okay, and it is much more dangerous because we cannot see our enemy, okay, it's a virus. Now, in a war-like situation, the character come out, okay, the people have to be at their peak. Otherwise, in a war, you will fumble. Likewise, okay, right now, the bigger war is what? We do not know how our enemy is going to behave in future. So the times are going to be uncertain. For it is important for all of us to be upgrade ourselves, okay, whatever the level we all are at right now, be it students, be it parents, be it teachers, be it administrators, be it anybody, we have to upgrade ourselves, okay. That is very, 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 very important. Now, the kids are to be taken care of completely by parents, by teachers, and everyone included. Now, I'll come to this part, technology. There will be questions, I know, at the end of it. Can technology replace live education? My answer is no. There is no chance, okay? Live education cannot be replaced by this technology. Technology can only aid. But what is the best possible option right now is that we can have either no classes or classes online, okay. So we will definitely take up the second option till the point the things normalize. So that is one aspect. Now, as far as this teaching online goes and what is the future, I'm so sorry, I will not be able to comment what is going to happen in future. But we as teachers or trainers or students can do is what? In this time which we have got, we should upgrade ourselves. We should learn technology. The institutions are also doing that. I think we have missed out one very important thing which the government has issued guidelines as well, that is Pragyata guidelines regarding this online education, is that this is something, okay, this I'm telling it to parents, that the teachers who are teaching your kids are also parents. They have double responsibility. They have to take their kids as well into the consideration while teaching yours. So be a little more cooperative with them. So this is, government has issued the guideline, okay? Regarding how much is required, this is very important because we have two lawyers over here. The government has issued advisory, okay? These are not laws which they have issued. If for class 1 to 9, these many classes, for class 9 to 12, these many, this is the syllabus. So please understand, all of you parents and teachers included over here, these are advisories, these are not laws. They are just recommending it, okay? You can have more than that or less than that, depending on it. Now, coming to the future of this education abroad, I will share a good news with all of you that there are examination like SAT and ACT, which the students after class 12th will write down to go to the institutions abroad for their undergraduate program. There was a dark cloud over all the happenings which are going around. But yesterday in Delhi, ACT happened smoothly, okay, in a center. The kids came, they traveled across, they wrote at the center with their gloves and mask on. So ACT has happened peacefully. And hopefully, I don't know what is going to happen in the future, but that is a welcome thing which has happened. As far as the other part of this thing goes, whether the parents will be able to send the kids abroad, will they be apprehensive or not? I'll tell you this, okay? In our country, we come from a land of gurus, okay? Wherein I am sure, okay, all of us know this shloka very well. कि गुरु गोविंद दो खड़े काके लागू पाए बलिहारी गुरु आपने गोविंद दियो बताए. So the teachers are like the gods, or even above the god in our culture. Now, as far as sending the kids abroad, why do the parents send the kids abroad? That is something which we need to understand. There are various levels of the education which will happen in our country. You have different kinds of the school. You have schools from the government, from the MCD. There are schools which are like top schools, which like Maharatni Gayatri Devi School and so many other schools. So the education happen at different scales on different levels. Why would I send my kid to a top school is not because of the syllabus. It is because of the other part of the learning which happens. Like the kids will pick up quite a few things looking at their teachers, principals, whatever the activities which are happening. So now why are the parents sending the kids abroad? Because they think their level will be up once they're sending it abroad. So my guess is this: once the things are normalized, the things will come back to the whole normal kind of the thing earlier. What the question which you asked, what the Indian institutions can do, I think they're doing a great job. Earlier, there were no options after the class 12 that if the students wants to go abroad for the universities which are offering like the STEM related courses. Now the universities are mushrooming, they're accepting SAT scores and so many things. So the universities are coming up. And I think the competition will go very, very, very global from a local level. So as of now, if I tell you this, okay, I am not at all competing with teachers across India. I'm teaching because I'm into the online frame. I'm competing with people abroad. Likewise, okay, as a student has an exposure to not only teachers across his locality, he can take classes from Salman Khan as well. Salman Khan, I'm referring to the Khan Academy founder, okay, not the other famous guy in India. Likewise, okay, I can add Shah Rukh Khan to it, okay. He's selling these days education tabs for edtech companies. So the education industry has boomed, okay. We have people coming to us and doing lots of things, and it is going to up. But live education, this classroom teaching, can it be replaced? No chance about it, okay, no chance about it. I'll tell you this, okay, this online teaching and this offline teaching has the same difference as a nurse and a mother, okay. That's as simple as that, okay. A nurse will take care of a kid and she'll do it nicely, okay, with due respect. But once you talk about mother, okay, she will not even tell you how much care she is taking. So that is the difference which will be there. Technology will be aiding it. And that's how I think I see the future, which is uncertain, but I think, okay, it will be bright.
You know, sir, I have another question. I mean, again, very insightful, and you've really, managed to capture some very important points. But just a question with the sort of experience that you have in the field. Do you think that as a counselor, is there any need that, after seeing this entire situation, will the advice that you give to students, will that change? Will that evolve? Like, what is it going to be like for all the counselors who are joining us today? So what would you tell them, that is there a need for them to change the track in terms of the advice that they give out to the students, especially the students who want to go abroad, or the students who are going to be even in India, what kind of universities to look at, what kind of courses to look at, because obviously this is the time of technology, new emerging careers are coming up. So what would you have to say to that?
My suggestion to, I hope I'm audible. My suggestion to all the counselors and the stakeholders will be what? You have to be ultra cautious once you are suggesting universities and colleges, whether in India or abroad, because there is a loads and loads of courses which are coming up, and various courses will have different sort of the requirement. For example, if I talk about university abroad, some of them, or let's take the Ivy League, is test optional now. So what they are looking forward for, they're not taking these tests, which is unnecessary pressure in the times of the corona on these students, okay, which are their students, that is the US and UK students. But our kids, okay, the Indian kids, they call them as international students. For them, whether it is required or not required, we don't know. Having a great score always adds to your profile. For example, in SAT, if you're scoring 800 out of 800 in maths or something like that, it will add to your profile. So my suggestion to this, everyone involved over here is what? Please prepare, okay? Please prepare. Whether the tests happen or do not happen, it is the process which we go through, okay? That is something which is more beneficial. Finally, okay, there is a bright chance, because I've just informed all the people involved over here that ACT happened yesterday, okay, which is for American college testing. So kids should prepare, okay? They should not worry about whether the test will be happening or not happening. So because this is a very important point which the kids, especially who are in the webinar, should understand. All of us are from different backgrounds, different schools, different colleges, different boards sometimes. So once you are taking graduation or post graduation, there should be a screening process that, okay, whether you will be able to understand that particular course or not. So a screening will happen in one form or the another. If it is not a SAT or ACT for the postgraduate kids, whether GMAT or CAT, whether it is happening or not happening, looking at your face, they will not give you the admission if they are the top colleges over there. So they will be having certain processes, and your profile is very important. Now, what has happened, like the big changes which are happening, I'll talk about like comedians these days, okay? They're out of the job almost, because you cannot go to their shows and stuff. So they are also doing these comedy shows online, okay, on Zoom, okay? They're charging prices for that. So they are working. Everyone of us has to work. Likewise, as a student, okay, you are supposed to build profile. This has been a new trend. All the kids are doing internship, whether they are from 11th grade, 12th grade, or your graduation online these days. So the companies are looking forward for those profiles. And please understand this. After this corona is over, after this goes, I wish it goes as soon as possible, there will be a big divide in all the institutions in terms of the students. I'll talk about that. For example, in our school, I'll not name it, okay, we have different sections based on our capabilities. Like section A wale achhe bache, section B wale like slightly lower, section C, okay, there are different sports wale bache. So there are categorization which happens across schools, if not formally, informally. These difficult times, the parents who have been active parents, they are doing wonders to their kids, okay? The parents who are taking back seat, okay, not doing much, just looking that whether their kid is looking at the screen or not, your kid will fall behind. So it is very important for the parents to become active parents. Active parenting is the key, okay? You cannot outsource everything. For example, like I observe these days, like your kid, okay, is creating trouble and stuff, okay? He wants to play with you physically. But because you do not have a time, you give him an iPad, okay? He's playing with the iPad. Then after a while, you're complaining it, okay? He's using too much of that. So active parenting will be the key. The parents who have invested time actually with the kids, once the school open, okay, there you will see, okay, different kind of the kids. And just by looking at the kids, you will be able to tell whether their parenting has been done well or not. So that's very important for the parents, that they become even more active parents, because this is a war. This is a war which we are into, and you are supposed to, what should I say, okay, punch above your weight. That's something which is very important for all of us.
Thank you so very much, sir, for your answer. And with this, I'd like to bring on my co-moderator to take the session forward. But I must let my panelists know that we have close to about 150 plus people who have joined us from various parts of the country. So we have people who have joined us all the way from Jammu and Kashmir to Kanyakumari. So we have a very diverse audience that both of you are addressing today, and there are a lot of questions that we have been receiving. So
For
while
the audience, I will add, the panel is also very diverse. Okay, I'm from Delhi, ma'am is from Jaipur, Rajat is from Uttar Pradesh, and you are from Maharashtra.
yeah,
So
that is absolutely true, sir. So over to you, Rajat. You're on mute. You'll have to unmute yourself.
So sorry, am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Kritika, and to both the panelists as well. We really had an engaging session so far. And I would try to take it further with as many questions as we can cover with a limited span of time. So now coming back to ma'am, we just saw an immensely successful results of CBSE, ICSE, and different state boards. But ma'am, at the same time, there's still suspense going with regards to current students who are in schools who must have entered class 11th or 12th. So what we would like to understand, ma'am, is there a need for the CBSE and ICSE curriculum to go through an overhaul post this outbreak? And also a very long ongoing debate about the fact that should there be a common standard curriculum throughout the country? Obviously, the autonomy of the state board and CBSE and ICSE will be there, but can we see a standardized curriculum so that when kids compete at a college level, they have certain level of similar education at the same time? So what are your thoughts about that? Ma'am, we can't hear you. No, ma'am.
Ma'am, you're on mute. So if you may just unmute yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
Am I audible? All right. Okay, thank you. So, Rajat, you spoke about overhauling the curriculum. If you have seen the curriculum of CBSE or ICSE, it's a holistic and very well researched, very well structured curriculum. So I don't think curriculum really requires overhauling, but we definitely need to relook at the approach towards the curriculum. How we approach the implementation of the curriculum has to be really looked into. What has happened is there has been a lot of debate about activity-based learning and about experiential learning. All these things are happening in small measures, but we are not able to bring it into implementation the way it should be as part of curriculum, which is there mentioned in the curriculum. If we go back a little and if we just dig into the last 7-8 years when we had CCE pattern, that is continuous comprehensive evaluation. Now that pattern threw up very interesting things, and in fact I thought it was a very good pattern. Unfortunately, for whatever reasons, it was pulled back and it didn't work out, but it had its very important features which we should bring into the curriculum, which will bring a lot of experiential learning and activity-based learning. So I feel the approach towards the curriculum needs to be looked into, because we have spoken of a lot of things, but we have still followed the same exam-oriented approach right from class 1 to class 12. Despite all the things that we talk about and the kind of technology that now that we have, I mean, now that pandemic is here and we have a fait accompli that we have to make do with technology. Online learning, there is no other option. So might as well utilize that part of it to make the curriculum more robust and more interactive and engaging. So we need to change the approach. We means the teachers. The teachers have to start re-looking at their lesson plans. Their technological, their pedagogical plans have to be re-looked into to make it engaging, because now that we are using the technology more, we realize so much can be done. There is immense possibilities if you use technology. There is so much that the children can learn through technology, and which will make it easy and more compatible for their learning. So this approach needs to be looked at when if I look at CBSE curriculum, because otherwise the curriculum is a very well structured curriculum. The second part of the question that you asked about a common standard curriculum. India is a country of diversity. We take pride in our diversity, and I think we really need to celebrate that diversity. So I don't think we should have a common curriculum. However, we should have some directive principles of education, like you have the directive principles of the state policy, which are not laws, but they are guiding lines as to when you make a policy, when the government makes a policy, they should keep those basic principles in mind. So I think if you have some common principles in mind, whether it's a state government and government at the national level or whichever board it is, probably they'll keep the overall principles in mind and then create curriculum as per their requirement and as per the place where they are. So talking about diversity, in fact, I feel that CBSE has to inculcate, they have to get the local and regional studies also into their curriculum. Because as a CBSE child, for example, my school in Jaipur, my children would know the climate of India, the national climate, the national geography of India, the national history, everything at a national level. But they do not know the history of Rajasthan the way they should. They do not know the local history of Jaipur. Jaipur is a historical place. They do not know the local climate, the local what is grown there. So I think we need to integrate the local and regional aspects into the CBSE curriculum, in fact. Although CBSE has come up with this art integrated approach where you are partner with another state. So Rajasthan is partnering with Assam. So whatever projects we ask our children to do has to be on Assam, so that you get to learn about Assam. But before learning about Assam, let's start learning about Rajasthan. So the thing is, we need to look at both the levels, local, regional, and national. And that is how the curriculum has to be re-looked, and approach has to be made more interactive and more engaging. That is the thing. Thank you.
May I add on to it, whatever ma'am has said? I think what ma'am has said so beautifully is what this syllabus and all those things are more or less in place. It is very important that how it is delivered. It is not about what is the syllabus that is there, I think, okay, which obviously will need an overhaul somewhat of it, but how a thing is done is very important. If you allow me, I'd like to share a small story so that all of us can pick up what is meant by this how, and what is very, very important, that how the process is done. So I'll share a story about a very small one, which I think all of us may have heard earlier. I'll share about Vivekananda. So what happened while Sri Vivekananda was about to go to address the Hindu Congress, he went to his mom and he asked for blessings. Ki, Mom, bless me. I'm going for the Hindu Congress and I will be delivering a lecture on religion. So his mom wanted to test him, whether he's ready or he is the right guy to do it or not. So what she did, she offered him the dinner. Okay, she made a good dinner for him. And then in between, she asked, can you pass me the knife? So what Vivekananda did, he passed the knife, and his mother calmly said, son, you have passed my test and I heartily bless you for going abroad. Vivekananda asked, Mother, how did you test me? I did not understand. On that, his mother replied, son, when I asked for the knife, I saw how you handed it to me. You gave the knife by holding its sharp edge and kept the wooden handle of the knife towards me. This way I could not get hurt. And when I take it, and this means you took care of me. This was your test which you passed. So it is a very simple thing, passing on a knife to someone. But how it is done is very, very important, and it talks a lot about it. So that is where the teachers, okay, they are like, why they are praised and so many things which are done. because the same syllabus, a teacher has an ability to deliver it to a large number of the student in a very different way. So that's what it is very important, that how the thing is done. Passing on to a knife, very small thing, but this is something which teaches us quite a bit. So the syllabus, everything, I think, okay, we should not do too much of changes. Yes, we should incorporate some newness to it, but how it is delivered is something which we should focus on.
Certainly, sir, and thank you to both the panelists to bring about a very important issues right from the lesson plan that teachers have to work on and the pedagogy that we need to look forward. Which brings me to an additional question, ma'am, that when we talk about that how things should be handled, what sir also mentioned, that about implementation, that the course is at place more or less, but it's the implementation that we need to work on. So my question would be, what are the certain measures that we can learn from your experience about shifting our school education from rote and textbook and exam-based learning, and to hone our teachers and parents to become educators and co-educators? How do we do that? Ma'am, you have to unmute yourself.
Am I audible now? All right. So I think it is a continuation of what we've been discussing already about the curriculum and all, and the fact that, you know, we need to, as Deepak also elaborated, we need to change the approach. Now, again, there has been a debate for, I don't know, since so long about rote learning and textbook oriented curriculum that we teaching that we have in our schools, but we haven't been able to shift it. Why? For me, what I think is because what is the end of your schooling? The end of the schooling is class 12. Now, class 12 is a board exam. Board exam, the results, I mean, everything depends on you. It's like your life hangs on the board results. That's the end of your life at times. That is the kind of mental stress children have, by and large. So board exams, the scores are very important because it will get you into a very good college, or the college of your choice, or the stream of your choice. So that those board exams marks are the most important thing at the end of your schooling. Now it's a trickle down effect. If the exams are based only on marks and your life depends on marks, then if you trickle down, then 11th also you are preparing for that board exam in 12th, in 9th and 10th also you are start looking at, okay, board exams after 3 years, let's do this. And coming down, when even during in the primary section, when we have a lot of activities, there are parents who complain, ma'am, activities bahut ho rahi hai, likh nahi rahe kuch bacche. So now the thing is, they want that, you know, children should be filling up notebooks and questions and answers, 10 questions in a lesson, answers, they learn it by heart and appear for the exam. So even if we want as teachers, let's make it less stress, activity oriented, experiencing, but parents have this thing. 6th, 7th, 8th, again, the same story. If we keep it more activity oriented, parents say, ma'am, we agree what you're saying is right. The philosophy behind it is very good. But the end of the day, 12th mein to marks hi count karenge na, which is also a fact. So the thing is, I feel till we change the pattern of the exam in 12th, nothing will change. No amount of discussion, no amount of change in curriculum, this, that, workshops. We have a whole lot of workshops going on for teachers also trying to do their best. Everybody is doing everything, but the exam pattern needs to be really changed. I was teaching, I'm a geography teacher basically, and I was teaching class 11th and 12th geography, CBSE. At the same time, I was also teaching A and AS levels, Cambridge. Same subject, same teacher, but my approach was totally different in both, because CBSE exams are a different pattern, CIE exams is a totally different pattern. So CIE, I was very much, project oriented, and children they had no choice but to understand the concept. They could not get away just mugging up things. They had to understand the concept, because the questions are based in such a manner that you cannot just learn and write. Whereas CBSE is, if even if you get a guidebook and learn 50 questions, you will sail through. So the point is, let's look at the exam pattern. There have been changes. CBSE has been getting in small changes here and there. But I think if I may use the word overhauling, it is here that overhauling is required. So the moment you change the pattern of the exam at the end of your schooling, everything will trickle down to a change in the rest of the pattern also. So that is, I think, the most important thing. And then everything will flow through. Teachers will become more experiential learning. Parents will understand the importance of projects and the kind of work that we give them and all. And as Deepak brought out, CBSE has come out with Pragyata. Very important when parents had time, so much time during lockdown to sit with their children. That was the time where they may have, some of them, I'm sure they must have done it, to spend time to teach them little nuances of making projects with what is available all around, and teaching them small little concepts in general of so many things it can be shared. So that is also what is required. We have art integrated learning, again curriculum, CBSE has come out. If you read it, it is amazing. But now how do you implement it? That again is the main question. So I think most important for me, I would be, let's look at the exam, the pattern of the exam that is there at the end of the day, and also the next exams, the entrance exams, which is connected to the board exam. So we need to look at the exam patterns. Thank you. Rajat, we can't hear you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and I'm certainly sure that whatever you have shared will reach at masses, and we can certainly see and learn something from this entire pandemic experience, that how to further develop our students, the entire learning, and the pattern that you talked about needs to be developed in manner to shift ourselves from rote and textbook learning, which has certainly been the debate of been certainly going since long. Now coming back to Mr. Matlani, sir, since you have had a vast experience using technology as a platform to educate children around the country, what we would like to understand from experience is how to make our Indian parents more welcoming towards education first, and at the same time, do you think it's the right time? And if it is, then how can we introduce courses like robotics, AI, data sciences at school level? What are your thoughts about it, sir?
So let's see. Okay. As far as the technology goes, it will require infrastructure. Like if you talk about online classes, why initially like the parents were a little circumspect and the teachers were also, because we all were in a lockdown. Most of us did not have the cameras or the mics or the lightings or those pen tabs and stuff. So initially whatever the teachers did once this lockdown was there, it was like what should I say, very impromptu kind of the thing. So that was the first impression which parents got, okay, that this is how the things are going to be done. No, okay, initially, okay, I'll show you this, okay, I have all the gadgets with me, okay, this is my board, okay. Now I was training teachers about how to go about the things online, but because it was a lockdown, they did not have this board, so they were writing on the piece of the paper showing it. So it was like not as impactful as it should have been, but that was the first impression, and first impression counts. So I'll request parents with folded hands, okay, those scenarios were different. It was like a very immediate thing to all of us, okay. It is not only teachers are from like our society only, okay, they're not coming from other planets. So it was very immediate. And because you understand, the kids are very comfortable with technology because they're born with phones and stuff. But the teachers who are seniors, who have worked hard throughout their life, they are not as comfortable with the technology as a youngster. But adding on to it, because it's been like almost 3 months, okay, more or less the teachers have also become comfortable. So now parents have different demands, okay, like okay, you're teaching well, okay, what about the other activities and stuff? So their demands will increase, which is okay. You expect everything from the teachers, they are willing to do it, but it will be done in steps. So now coming to your next part, that is artificial intelligence and robotics and machine learning, whatever. In our country, we will require big infrastructural changes. I'm sure a good number of the schools and the university will be able to incorporate because of their deep pockets. But if you want to reach it at the grassroots level, I think we are like 3-4 years ahead of 3-4 years behind in terms of that. So yes, technology will be an aid, and please understand this. Okay, this foreign education or the education in America or UK or the European countries, they have infrastructure for like these online classes and everything. Now in our country, please understand this, not every one of us have a cell phone with a 3G or 4G connection. Okay, so the government is also coming up with radio channels, with TV channels, and doing all sort of things, but it will require loads and loads and loads of infrastructure, and that is what will be the very, very important thing in the future. And adding on to this, okay, this is, please understand this point. This investment will be required from loads of schools and universities, which will come via parents directly or indirectly. So that is something which all of us need to understand. If we are looking forward for some extremely great quality services, you have to pay for it. You have to pay for it. Okay, otherwise, okay, you will not be able to get the things which you are dreaming for. So if you are dreaming for a 5-star kind of a room in a hotel, and if you are not willing to pay the price, okay, you go to a dharamshala. That's how what I'll put this very, very clearly. These are expensive things. Like you're talking about AI and all those things. Some universities are using artificial intelligence for their admission process, not for teaching and all those other things. So that's, I think, what I feel about it. In future, okay, the things will change, technology will aid it, but the, what should I say, the superstar will be the live teacher always. That is what I strongly believe. A live teacher cannot be replaced. The technology can aid only. That's very, very important.
Certainly, sir, and I'm sure, as you mentioned, we all need to come together to make certain changes that we desire. Nothing can be solely done by one part of the picture or maybe half part of the picture. All of us are playing a role as a stakeholder in imparting education to young kids. And as rightly said, we all need to come up together to make that happen. Now, before Kritika takes over, regards to a lot of audience question, I'm sure she must be coming through.
I'll just wrap up with just one additional point, which
Sure,
I was making. All of us, okay, I'm not saying, okay, to kids, parents, teachers, all of us as humans are resistant to change. Okay, we don't want to change.
Okay.
That's what is very important. This virus has taught us this. Okay, please change. Okay, so let's see how much we become more flexible. So that is one aspect which I like about whatever is happening. We are willing to change now. So let's see how many people change and stuff.
Certainly, sir. So before Kritika comes up with a lot of questions, she must have gone through from the audience end. One last thing which I would like to put in front of both our panelists is, when we talk about young kids, there's always an aspect of mental health and peer pressure that comes into picture, and which should be rightly addressed by all of us as educators, especially when we have someone like ma'am with vast years of experience working on different schools and dealing with certain issues. So my question here with both the panelists will be that, can integration of values and ethics help students to make more informed choices, steer them away from peer pressure? And at the same time, what are the various skill and aptitude building exercise that we can provide to our school kids to meet these certain requirements? This is something which I put to both our panelists, and ma'am, if you may take it first. Ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'll use the same analogy that Deepak has already used. The life is like a battlefield, and it is the Kurukshetra. All our lives are like Kurukshetra, and we are all Arjuns. Now, in Kurukshetra, during the battle, Arjun needed some guidance, and that guidance came from Krishna. Krishna is our consciousness. So it is the consciousness which will guide us throughout our lives. Throughout the battle, Arjun was guided by Krishna, which means Arjun was guided by his consciousness. Now, this very simply explains that consciousness is the most important thing. And that is what we need to develop in our children, because That is that is going to be their moral compass or the moral fabric which will guide them for further actions. So whenever they make a choice, when they are faced with a certain dilemma, when they are under peer pressure, when they are in the need of some guidance, if they don't have anybody around them, it is their own awakening, it is their own conscience that they have to fall back on. And that is why values, morals, ethics, all these we have to inculcate in them right from the child, जिसको हम संस्कार बोलते हैं हिंदी में संस्कार हम बचपन से इसीलिए डालना शुरू करते हैं. Today, if the parents, when they send them abroad, suddenly a child goes miles away, and obviously you have a lot of fears, you have a lot of concerns about the child's safety, and apart from the physical safety, safety in every which way. So what you fall back, you are what gives you confidence is that you have given him the right values and ethics, and you are sure that he or she will make right decisions, because there will be nobody guiding them at that time. So very important that ethics, morals are the moral compass which is going to guide us throughout our lives. Now we do, as I had already discussed, in the school we do a lot of activities. In the curriculum we try and get in a lot of activities such as discussions and debates and role plays and all things, so that there's a continuous system of reflection and feedback and realization at every step. Whenever child is doing something good or not so good, realization that this is good, so it has good consequences. This should be avoided because we need to look at it in a different way. So there is a situation when a child is being bullied. It is not just catching hold of that bully and punishing, but creating a dialogue where everybody should understand, say that this is not the right thing to do. To develop values like empathy, sympathy, kindness, care, gratitude, all these values through different situations. So I will quickly tell you two very interesting things that we do in the school. One, we have something called the honor till. Hindi you call it Imandari ka Galla. So we have a stall put up now and then, and we have all these items displayed there, like a pencil, eraser, plate, notebooks, and mainly stationery items. And we put a price tag, and there's nobody manning that stall. There is no stall keeper. So whoever wants something places 5 rupees for the eraser and picks up the eraser and goes back. We have done it time and again, and every time, you won't believe it, we have ended up with more money than we should have collected. So there are times when people don't have the change, they put the entire money and they don't pick up anything. What we are trying not to teach them just honesty, simple honesty, but what we are trying to teach them that integrity actually means being honest even when somebody is not looking, even when you are not being watched. So that is actual integrity. So that is one thing which we do and which has been a very good thing, very good learning experience. Another, we have classes of Awakened Citizenship program we have taken up, wherein there are modules of different situations. Like I just spoke about a situation where a child is getting more marks than the other child. How does the child feel? If a child is being praised by the teacher, there are 3 others who feel a little, uncomfortable. They don't like it. They feel the teacher is being, biased towards that. These kind of everyday situations are there, and then there is a discussion on these things. How that child is feeling, how others are feeling, why did the teacher do that? And there is no judgment. There is no right and wrong. It's just everybody bringing out their thought processes. So these kind of things we do in the school, because moral lectures are not going to help, but realization and reflection on your actions. That is the only way you can teach morals and ethics. And as I said, morals and ethics, they are going to be your North Star. They are going to be a moral compass all your life. Thank you.
Rajat, you have to unmute yourself.
So thank you so much, ma'am. And before we move on to Deepak sir adding on to this particular issue, I really want to thank for inculcating such practical life examples which you follow at your own school. And I'm sure we all can learn from this and organize same sort of activities within our own space, because certainly we learn more from reflections rather than from textbook lessons based on honesty and integrity. Sir, over to you.
Like, this is what I want to express, that whatever ma'am is doing in her school just as an exercise, this will be part of so many other exercises which they will be doing. This cannot be done online. Okay, this cannot be done online. So those teachers were slightly worried about the future and stuff. In case you are inculcating values like this, no robot, no machine, no videos can replace you. So that is something which all of you should be on toes. So very beautifully put, ma'am. But I would like to just add on to it as one last story kind of the thing, because I'll tell you why I'm going into these stories. This is something which I think all of us as teachers and parents should be very, very comfortable with. We should have stories to tell our kids, because our culture is stories, stories, and stories. We teach in terms of stories. Ma'am has rightly pointed out Krishna and Arjuna. So Gita is also a Geet, which is a song, and it is almost done in form of a song and a story. So I'll just share you an incident, and this is what is very, very important for us as teachers, parents, and all the stakeholders to understand. How do we treat kids as? What do we see kids as? Whether they are some marks or a human or what? I'll share. What was happening? Okay, there was a sculptor. Okay, in Hindi you can call that a shilpkar. So he was doing what with his chisel and hammer out of a stone. He was hammering it and doing all those things. After a while, what happened out of the stone which he was carving out? There was a beautiful statue which he created. So there was a passerby who said, "Wow, what a statue you have created out of this stone." The artist, the sculptor said, "No, no, 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 you are getting me wrong. I did not create this statue out of this stone. I just manifested the unmanifest. The statue was always there. I just removed the unnecessary part out of it." This is how the kids needs to be treated. Okay, they're already what should I say? Okay, the nicest piece of the life which comes on the earth. Okay, you may have seen. Okay, when the kids are very young, okay, they are full of energy and teaching us quite a few things. We need to treat them very cautiously. Okay, they're already great in terms of various aspects. We just need to remove the unnecessary part, not hammering it. Okay, taking it very good care of them and growing them into wonderful human beings, which technology will be aiding to it. And the teachers and parents need to be proactive in terms of dealing with the kids. Okay, so that's what my addition to it.
Thank you so much, sir. And since we are lacking on time, I would like Kritika to jump onto this conversation and just address a lot of questions that our audience must be putting up from past 1 hour. Kritika, over to you.
Thank you so much, Rajat. For all our audience members joining us, I must tell our esteemed panelists, there's so much of positive feedback that we are getting from everybody. So many private messages coming to me that they're gaining so much from this session. And it's all thanks to the both of you for all this very practical insights and advice that you're sharing with everybody. I think everybody's gaining quite a bit. A lot of people have asked us a lot of questions about whether they can see the recording of this webinar. So we have a YouTube channel by the name of View TV by whichever please subscribe to our channel. You will find the recordings of all our webinar episodes there. So that'll make sure in case you've missed out something on the live episode, you can catch on to it there. So, ma'am, I've picked out a few questions. So I'm going to first post the questions to you, and then Rajat can post the remaining audience questions that they have for Mr. Deepak to him. So, ma'am, to you, two major questions that I see emerging out of this. Firstly, can you share with us your experience as a principal of such a highly prestigious school? You know, when you were making that shift during the pandemic from regular schooling to online education, I'm sure there would have been so many challenges that were thrown at you. Firstly, how did you deal with the fact that how do you ensure to keep students motivated only to focus on online classes and not sort of switch to social media or YouTube and get distracted? So how do you maintain that academic rigor, what we maintain in schools over an online medium? Second, a lot of audience members have also asked us that how did you counsel parents? Because a lot of parents would have had a lot of questions and they would have had a lot of reservations about online education. So how did you get past the hurdle of parents? And third and most importantly, because we have seen a lot of different judgments that are coming from various states, how has online education panned out according to you at a primary education level, when you're really dealing with the little ones? So, what would you like to say in regard of these three things? Because these are the major themes that I see that are coming out of the audience questions. So, ma'am, over to you. If you could throw some light from your experience as a principal of this highly prestigious school of India today.
Kritika? All right. Thank you, Kritika. Thank you so much, and thank you, audience, for all these questions. I will try to be brief and not go into too lengthy discussion, because this has been 3 months, and 3 months have been a roller coaster ride for everybody. It doesn't matter whether you are from whichever school you are, because I think we've all faced challenges. So the day the lockdown happened, and within 2-3 days, we realized that this is going to be there for some time. We need to do something about it. We immediately had to go online. So that entire curriculum, which was happening in a physical space, where children were coming and going, and we had boarders. I mean, I don't know if you're aware, we have a boarding school come day school. So we had boarders on the campus also. So to get them safely out of the campus and all that was also a challenge in itself. However, touch wood, everything went off well. And we were also a center for the board exams, where 400 children were coming to our campus for the exam. So everything was happening in, everything was a challenge at that time. When the lockdown happened, the only option, if we wanted, what came to my mind basically was that there should be no learning gaps. Learning should not stop. So now what do we do? The only option for us and for everybody at that time was online classes. However, our school, at least in our school, we've not been doing any kind of online classes except for using technology for very basic day-to-day use. So we had to immediately take a plunge into this fathomless digital sea, and the teachers had to swim through, understand, implement, and just use it the best way they could to start off the online classes. So as scheduled, we started a session from 7th of April, and we started in the beginning, we started with Zoom or WebEx or Google Meet, whatever the teacher was comfortable with. So we started with 3 periods. We also posted all our assignments and syllabi on the website so that it can be downloaded. We also were sending the same thing through the WhatsApp class groups also. So we had a 3-pronged strategy at that time, so that if you miss out the Zoom class, then at least you have something on the WhatsApp group, and you also have some information on the website. So the whole purpose at that time was concentrated on the fact that yes, we have to get past this little challenge and motivate our children to carry on with their studies, or rather than start with their study. I sent a video clip talking to the parents and children. My video clip was circulated. I sent letters to parents, as you said about parents intermingling with parents. So we continued for 2 months, but June we thought there should be a break. But now that time we realized that it is not just the academic rigor which is required. What is required is trying to make the children feel that this is just one of those things. We are going through a difficult phase, but it's all right. It'll soon pass, and we will get over it. So June month, we decided to have a summer skill share program, and amazingly, we had whole lot of workshops for class 1 to 12, right from art, which is t-shirt painting and banner making, and we had dance, which was Punjabi and Boomer and contemporary and Zumba. We had physical fitness, meditation, martial arts, fitness modules for all the sports. We had people from different walks of life coming and telling us about how to be a radio jockey, how to do cooking, which was again baking and continental and tireless cooking. We had art of doodling and fine handwriting, storytelling, poem writing, painting, theater workshop. I think you name it, and we had all kinds of workshop. And the most beautiful part was that all these workshops were taken up by our ex-MGDs, whom in our school it's a tradition to call them Jijas, like you have Didi in Hindi. So all the Jijas took these workshops, and there was an immediate connect with the girls, because the girls make a better connect with Jijas rather than teachers. So the focus was not just on learning these different things, but also on their emotional and social quotient was looked after during that period. I think that was a very important period, and that kind of eased out that tension of technology and how to use it and what to do it. So that we also had MUNs, we had career this thing, we had competitions, online competitions of debates and everything. So that period kind of sort of, as you said, how did we connect with the children? So that made the children feel that, okay, online we can have studies also, we can have activities also, we can have fun also. We even had happiness classes, which were very, very nice. That was really appreciated by all. So all these things we tried. Of course, you cannot replicate the physical school online, but we tried to keep the IQ, EQ, SQ, intelligent quotient, emotional, social, spiritual, and adversity quotient in mind to cater to all these things. Parents, as I said, I wrote letters to them. Then we are having regular PTM with the parents to get their feedback, to understand what is working and what is not working. Because that is, we are still learning, and we are still facing glitches of technology. We still face hiccups. But we have a communication channel open so that we understand where we are going wrong and what is it that we need to improve upon. For primary, as I said, these workshops worked out very well. Initially, for primary classes, we were only sending self-created videos and little small, simple worksheets for the children. After these workshops, the children class 1, 2, 3, they became very, very interested in, wanting to come on Zoom and understanding what is happening. So they became quite comfortable. They got to know the teacher got to know the students. And now we started academic classes for primary, 2 periods a day. And we start off with a prayer, a thought, and a 10-minute just simple conversation, interaction with the teacher and the students. And the teaching is just about 15 to 20 minutes. So we try and keep the, the fun part of it also, at the same time looking at the emotional and other needs also, and making sure that the learning is not hampered or there's no learning gap. So I guess I've summed it up. This is what we went through the last 3 months.
Beautifully summed up, ma'am. I think these are such, like practical things and small things. And I just love the approach that you and your team has had to, how to ease students into this process. The positivity is very much reflecting in your thoughts and the team's actions. We can clearly see it. Over to you, Raja.
Much, ma'am. As Kritika rightly said, that these were very important lessons and steps that you took at your school, and certainly the students were fortunate to have all of these exercises doing while sitting safely at home. Now, coming back to you, sir, out of the few questions that I could have gone through from the plethora of which audience have put, there are 2 things as being a founder of an edtech firm which I would like you to address. Firstly, as you said, that the teachers were new to all these technological platforms. Obviously, the students are more equipped. So how do you address the stress that teachers are still facing? Obviously, there are a lot of teachers who are still not very comfortable with teaching over Zoom or making WhatsApp video classes and everything. So how do they deal with the entire issue? Secondly, when we talk about online classes or taking technology forward, there's always a part of small towns and tier 3 towns that we miss. We certainly assume that, okay, nowadays everyone must be having these access, but that's not true with regards to our country. So, how do you plan and how do you suggest that education should reach out beyond the barriers to these underprivileged kids, to small towns in our country?
All right. So I will just answer both the questions, that what the teachers should do and what should be done for the students who do not have access to these webinar kind of the thing, which is a good number of the people. I'll just answer the second question first. What the government is doing is it is coming up with portals and radio. Okay, radio is one of the most important medium which is used even while floods. Okay, once you have floods, the radio is the only thing which works. It does not require too much of infrastructure. So radio Akashvani is using its reach to reach the kids there. So that is one thing which is being done at a great scale. If the kids in smaller towns do not have access to these devices, even there are panchayat offices wherein they are going and attending those classes. So it is being done at a ward scale, though these things do not reach media because it does not create eyeballs. Okay, the things which will create eyeballs will be somebody teaching bad. Okay, so that is just one or few cases. So that is something which I'll suggest people from the media also sitting in the audience, that please spread some positive news as well. Okay, as much ferociously as you do something, because the millions of teachers and billions of students, there will be fumbles. So that is something which these things should be addressed across. So radio and television channels, the government is using very efficiently across the spectrum, and NGOs are also working day in day out, and their funds have dried out. I'll tell you, because of the corona, the economy has taken a hit. So these things are being done. Now, the second aspect which you talked about, the teachers, that some of us are not comfortable with the technology and they're struggling still, and so many other things. First thing I will tell you this is, most of the teachers have a very intimate relationship with their batch, with their students. So one major thing which I was training the teachers initially was that parents are looking at us and this thing is being done and we are feeling shy, we're not comfortable with it. So their whole process was changed by telling them a few things which will help. Now, you do not know in these times, for example, if I'm taking your class, how many people are looking at me, whether your friend is looking at me, or if I'm taking, suppose, a class in a very small school online, and it may be a case that Archana ma'am is looking at me and liking my class and offering me something, ki sir aap hamare school aake padhao, or you may get international offers. So please do not worry about how many people are looking at you. If you are good at your craft, if you are very good at your subject, after a while you will become very comfortable with the technology. And I am very sure if you're doing your job well, this is going to spread across, because you know how much technology, like what is the pace of the technology which it travels. Your lectures will be seen across the planet, okay, not only in India. So if you're doing your job really well, you will be seen across, and you should pray to God that not only parents, their friends should see you, their whole of the neighborhood should see you. There is competition, I'll tell you, okay. The teachers who are doing well, for example, if I'm from school X, if I'm delivering a lecture and if I'm delivering well, students from school Y are also looking at my lecture. So that is a big opportunity for trainers. If they are doing their job well, their work will travel across. This technology thing, okay, which is happening sometimes with all of us, like we're not comfortable with, let's take a webinar jam or Zoom or something. This will be a very short-term thing. After a while, you will become comfortable. I'll give you an example. This happens with every household, okay. Whenever you gift a phone to your mom, okay, initially she'll be like, nahi, mere se nahi chalega, mere ko sirf wo hara button, lal button wala. Now they have shifted to WhatsApp only, say they'll send voice notes. So technology, you will get time to get used to it. I think we have spent almost 100 days close to that using this, whatever the technology which we are using. So you'll become easy. You will become easy. For example, if you look at the work of even the artist, the beginning of the career. After some while, okay, they will be more refined. So please do not worry about the technology aspect. Just make your lectures so good that your work should travel. Okay, so you do not worry about whether parents are looking at you. I'm telling you this. Okay, you will be very, very nervous if parents are looking at you and you are teaching a topic which you are not comfortable with. If the topic is your forte, okay, you would like, okay, bring it on. Okay, that's what, okay, more trainers would like to do. So if you're worried about the technology, after a while it will become automatically comfortable. You please focus more on your class structures, how you are delivering it, how you are making it more interactive. And yes, kids will be having some fun in between. Okay, they'll be doing X, Y, Z because they're supposed to do that. Okay, they're kids, so you do not worry much about it. They will be doing some sort of here and there kind of the thing, which you will also appreciate. But my suggestion to everyone will be this is a big opportunity to travel across the globe. Okay, this opportunity even Gautam Buddha did not have. Okay, he used to speak to only a certain number of the people. It used to travel. Right now, I think we are speaking across the globe, all four of you. Okay, just by sitting in our chairs. So this is a big opportunity for teachers. Okay, so they do not need to worry. They just need to update them a little bit, and sometimes more than the kids, so that they cannot do things in between.
Kritika, if you have some closing remarks for our panelists, else we'll move forward to the concluding the session.
Nothing at all, Rajat. I think, the chat box speaks for itself. I mean, so many comments coming in our way that people thoroughly enjoyed it, and, they've taken back so many useful insights. So I think, this has really been an excellent session that we have hosted. I mean, this episode today has seen some really good feedback from the audience. So over to you, Rajat. Thank you so much to both of our panelists. It's truly been a delight moderating this session along. I think both Rajat and I resonate the same feelings here. I mean, there's so much that both of us have learned as young educators who are stepping out in the field. So I think this has truly, truly been delightful, and kudos to both of you for that. I mean, both of you really seem to be brimming with so much knowledge and practical experience and wisdom. It's just so reflective in all of your answers.
Certainly, Kritika. I guess you speak for myself when you are trying to thank our speakers for the kind of session that we had, and obviously echoing the emotions of our audience as well. So with that, I would like to conclude this session by thanking Ms. Archana ma'am for taking her extremely important time out and coming onto our platform. We certainly had really fruitful takeaways from you, ma'am, learned from your vast experience, touching upon the practicality of imparting of education, and then moving on to what this pandemic has taught, and at the same time, what goes forward beyond this. At the same time, I would like to thank Mr. Deepak. Sir, you have been great source of inspiration for me since always. And your expertise with this platform of using technology, how we can reach further, what are the developments that we can see, how adaptable can we with regards to our day-to-day life, and how to inculcate technology in that really help out me, Kritika, and all the audience, and anyone who will go through this webinar will surely learn a lot. At the same time, thank you so much, Kritika, for working really hard to make this session a success, looking after all the procedure, all the technical issues at the back of your hand, and being available at a very short notice whenever we used to face something with regard to concluding and conducting this particular session. So thank you so much, all of you, and we really hope to have these sort of engaging session again in future.
Thank you very much, Rajat. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, sir. It's truly been an honor and privilege. And for Rajat, always it's a privilege co-moderating the session with you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for goodness.
Thank you.
It was really wonderful, having fun. I think we are.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.